Hey guys, today I'm going to talk to you about what might be the best value for money wet and dry vacuum cleaner. Let's find out more. And to be honest, UWANT reached out to me asking if I'm interested in reviewing their first wet and dry vacuum cleaner, and I was a bit hesitant. I almost dismissed them. But then I took a look at the spec sheet that they attached. At that point, the product hadn't been released yet, so there was no product page. And I saw some interesting features. So I asked them what price point were they planning on selling this at, and when they told me, I was very pleasantly surprised to see this much features at this low a price point. And to be honest, a lot of competitors in the same price range as the D100 don't have a lot of the features that it does have, or the ones that do are priced at a much higher price point. So I was intrigued and I said yes, and I'm glad I did. So yes, this is a sponsored review. They did send me the vacuum for free. However, this does not impact my opinion, which remains objective and unbiased. Now, before we start with the review, let me tell you what a wet and dry vacuum is. And if you're already familiar with that, feel free to use the chapter selectors at the bottom to skip the part and get right to the review. So a wet and dry vacuum cleaner is, as the name obviously suggests, a vacuum cleaner that does both wet and dry vacuuming. And essentially it replaces your traditional vacuum cleaner and your traditional mop into one machine that at the same time vacuums your floors but also cleans them with fresh water. And the advantage there, of course, is you don't have to first vacuum your floors and then go over them with a mop, and then the mop gets dirty and you have to move around a water bucket and keep bringing the mop and whatnot. This is, let's say, the 21st century version of a mop and bucket. The nice thing about it is that there's two water tanks, a fresh water tank that's constantly feeding a rotating brush, but also a separate dirty water tank that's collecting all the dirty water. So you're always mopping with fresh water and those two never mix. The other advantage is because it does both wet and dry. If you have any messes on the floor that are both a combination of dry chunks of food or whatnot, but also liquids, the machine can easily go over them and clean that mess for you. And normally when you're done cleaning your floors, you put the machine back on the base, which is going to charge it. But then there's also some sort of cleaning cycle that cleans the brush roll. And in some models, also a component that dries the brush roll so you don't develop bad odors and mildew and whatnot. So now that we covered what a wet and dry vacuum is, let's talk about the D100. And let's start with the cleaning modes. The D100 has 3 different modes. A smart mode that uses sensors to detect the level of food or debris on the floor and adjust the cleaning power accordingly. There's also a turbo mode that kicks the machine into a higher power. And then there's a suction only mode that does not dispense any liquid, but rather only sucks whatever is on the floor. Now, independent of these 3 modes, there's also another button, that's the water level button, and this button lets you configure how much water you'd like to be used. And you can choose between low water, normal water, or a high output of water. Now, traditionally, most wet and dry vacuums don't separate these two, usually only have different modes, and each mode has a set combination of water level and suction power. So for example, turbo mode usually has a higher suction power, higher brush rotation speed, but also a higher water output level. And you're stuck with these predefined modes and combinations unless you have a model that's Wi-Fi connected and has an app and you can further customize the water level independently. So in a way, it's nice that they've separated the water volume output from the modes because it gives you more granular control over these different combinations in the absence of an app that lets you customize these. I only wish there was a visual indicator of what water level you were in rather than relying on the voice prompt to tell you what water level, but that's not a deal breaker. The vacuum also has 180-degree lay flat capabilities, which is really nice. And this is something that's not always found on wet and dry vacuums, especially on entry-level ones. It's usually only found on the higher priced ones. So it's really nice that they've implemented this. And this helps you go under chairs, under furniture more easily, as the vacuum can literally lay flat at 180 degrees. And it has a clearance of 13.5 centimeters, which is pretty low. The vacuum is also lightweight at 4.3 kilograms. And while it does not have motorized wheels, the brush itself, as it's rotating, provides traction, which really helps you push the machine forward with very little or minimal effort. And as you can see, if I put the machine on the floor, it's just going to move by itself because of that forward traction caused by the brush roll. And this is great to have. I recently tested the Bissell Crosswave Edge, which did not have that, and you really have to apply a lot of force to push it forward. And the amount of effort you need to put in is quite noticeable. And of course, you're not pushing a rock up a hill, but still, especially being used to using machines that have that either self-propelled wheels or the traction coming from the brush, I think it's a day and night difference having that feature or not. The machine also has dual edge cleaning, which is really nice to see. And again, a lot of the machines at the lower price points either don't have any edge cleaning or they have a single edge cleaning. So when I say dual edge, the brush extends to both edges, which lets you clean very close to the baseboards. And matter of fact, the D100 did an excellent job at getting really close to the edge, and we'll see that later in the cleaning tests. And then there's a few other features that really stood out to me and kind of set this machine apart from a lot of the competitors. For starters, it has a push-in base station, and to be honest, I think it's the first time I try something like this. All the other machines, you usually put them on the base the other way around, which is quite an interesting design decision because you don't have to lift the machine off and sometimes give it a few tries to get the contacts to lock in, like with all other machines. You simply park it, you drive it in, lock the handle, and that's it. And the base station is removable and washable, which is nice. You can completely detach it, as you can see, and wash that. But more importantly, the brush motor is waterproof, and you can also wash that, which is something I haven't seen on any of the other wet and dry vacuums. Usually there's a warning that says, do not let this get wet. So it's very interesting that this is completely waterproof, and if you need to, you can hose it down with water. Another unique thing of the D100 that I've also not seen on any of the other machines is the fact that the handle is adjustable. So you can unclick it from here and it swivels and makes cleaning easier. And that's also a very interesting design decision. They also have a deodorizing stick in the water tank, and they say it helps remove odors. To be honest, there's no way for me to have tested that claim, but I guess there's no harm in it being there. If it's going to be removing any odors, then that's great. And then another interesting feature that also I don't have any means of testing, it does electrolysis of water. Now, this is something we've seen in a few of the machines out there, especially higher priced ones. The idea behind it is that the electrolysis of water creates water that helps kill bacteria and disinfect your surfaces. And again, this is something we only see on higher priced models. So it's great that they have this feature. I have my reservations on how effective or not it is. I really don't know. I understand the theory behind it, but in practice, I'm not a chemist, nor do I have access to a lab to see if it's actually disinfecting the floors or not. But again, it's a feature that we only see on vacuums that are twice the price of this one. So it's very interesting that they've included that in this vacuum. It's also the first vacuum that I see with a dual tank design. That is, the dirty water tank and the fresh water tank are both in the same tank. Usually these are two separate tanks. I've never seen any vacuum like that. They say it makes maintenance easier. In a way, I guess you're taking with you one tank to the sink to wash and refill. I'd never really thought about having a 2-in-1 tank, but that was an interesting design decision. And it has a tooth comb scraper to help minimize the amount of hair that could be tangled on the brush roll. And lastly, this is something I was really happy to see, it has hot air brush drying at 60 degrees Celsius to dry the brush roll when you put it back on the base, which is something I really look for in a wet and dry vacuum, especially because I live in a humid area where I don't get a lot of sunlight. So air drying the brush roll is not something that's very convenient for me to do. And if you leave a wet and moist brush roll, well, it's going to start smelling and developing bad odors. And again, a lot of the models out there at this price point and even more expensive ones either don't have brush drying at all or have cold air brush drying, which takes hours to complete. So enough talking about the features. Let's see how it performed in the cleaning tests. So let's start with the coffee stain test. I poured some coffee on the floor and I let it dry over 12 hours. And as you can see, very easy first pass gets most of the coffee out. And look how close to the edge it actually got. I was very impressed with the edge cleaning capabilities of the D100. Next up, the ketchup test. Now this is a stress test. I also let the ketchup dry over 12 hours. And as you might know, it's a very tough stain to get out. So it's more of a stress test. It took a lot of passes, but eventually it did get the stains out. Now you're more likely to have a fresh ketchup stain to remove, and as you can see, first pass gets all of it out. Next up, milk and cereal, and again, from the first pass, it gets the milk and the larger chunks of cereal with absolutely no issue at all. Now, after all the cleaning was done, this is all the liquid, all the mess that it cleaned. And look at this over here. That is the solid separation, which is awesome. It has a filter that catches all the solid debris. And this way you can dump these in your garbage bin and then pour all the liquid down your sink so you don't clog it with the solids. Now, after the cleaning was done, this is what the brush roll looked like, and it's fairly clean, to be honest. I expected it to be worse, but there's a little bit of red staining from the ketchup. So we put the machine back on the base and run the brush cleaning cycle. As you can see in the lower corner, it's going to electrolyze the water, and then it's going to perform the brush cleaning. And this is all the water that it extracted from that brush roll. And that's pretty impressive. I think it did a really good job at cleaning the brush roll. And look at how the brush roll looked like after that cleaning session. I think it's fantastic. There's barely any trace of any ketchup, any coffee, any milk, or anything from everything that it cleaned. And after all that was done, I put the machine back on the base to start the drying cycle, which takes about 1 hour. And as you can see, it actually uses hot air close to 60 degrees. And it is fairly silent, measured at around 42 decibels, which was really good. And after the full hour, the brush roll was almost completely dry. I'd say about 90 to 95%, which was great. Lastly, the hair tangle test. I put some pink hair strands on the floor and I went over them. And the first test that I did, it did struggle with the hair. As you can see, the hair did get stuck on the brush, but surprisingly it did not tangle. So it was very easy to remove. But as that was a stress test with very concentrated strands of hair that were also very long, I did another test with more dispersed strands to try to mimic real life scenarios. And here, as you can see, it did a great job. There was absolutely no hair that was tangled on the brush roll, and all the strands were caught by the filter in the dirty tank. So there you have it, the D100 wet and dry vacuum cleaner from UWANT. Would I recommend it? Well, to be honest, I'm yet to see any wet and dry vacuum cleaner in the market at this price point that has this many features and does this good of a job at cleaning. I will put links in the description to the product page of the D100, and make sure to check those out to see the price at the moment you're watching this. These are affiliate links. I may earn some commission on some qualifying purchases at absolutely no extra cost to you. But if you do decide to purchase, I would appreciate if you would use these links, as this will help support the channel. But yeah, if you're looking for good value for money in a wet and dry vacuum cleaner, I don't think you can beat what the D100 offers. I've reviewed over a dozen different wet and dry vacuum cleaners, and some of the even more expensive ones miss a lot of features. The Bissell Crosswave Edge, for example, which is similarly priced, does not have dual edge. It only has single edge cleaning and does not have any brush drying at all, and also does not have any self-propelled wheels or traction from the brush roll, which makes moving it much harder, and cannot do 180-degree lay flat either. Most of the machines from Tinko, for example, which are much more expensive, with the exception of the S6 Stretch, don't have 180-degree lay flat capability, so you can't go under furniture, and a lot of them, even the more expensive ones, don't even have any brush drying as well. Roborock has great wet and dry vacuums, but their Flexi Lite, which is, if I'm not mistaken, more expensive than this, has single-sided instead of dual-sided brush cleaning, and also does not have a suction mode, which is weird, so you cannot use it without dispensing water. The D100 has them both. Dreamy has a huge lineup of wet and dry vacuums in H12 Pro, H13 Pro, even the H14, which again is more expensive than this. They miss a few basic things. For example, there's no max mode, which is something I really need in a machine. So you can never kick the machine into higher power, which is bizarre. The D100 has that. Another maybe basic thing, but also important for me, missing from the Dreamy lineup, you cannot start the drying process of the brush roll without first starting the cleaning process, which is again weird design decision, because let's say you spilled water in the floor, you really don't want to go through a couple of minutes of loud brush cleaning cycle and you just want to dry the brush roll. There's no way to do it on the Dreamies. Whereas with the D100, you can press and hold the button for a couple of seconds and it's just going to start the drying cycle without doing the cleaning cycle. So all this to say, the over a dozen wet and dry vacuums that I've tested and I have reviewed on the channel, you can go back to my channel and look for these individual reviews if you're interested. Most of them, even the more expensive ones, miss a lot of the features that the D100 has. So back to, do I recommend it? Absolutely. It's a great value for money machine that is very hard to beat. That's all for me. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel, as this encourages me to continue producing content. Until next time, cheers.